Space Marines, the Adeptus Astartes, the Emperor's Angels. In the official narrative of Warhammer 40k, they are towering, gene-forged, indomitable gods of war, able to crush armies single-handedly and conquer entire hostile planets with the might of a single squad. On the tabletop though, they are just dudes in pretty cool armor who are guaranteed to die to a volley of junk round fire from angry green aliens because the dice hate you. My name's Guy, you're watching Midwinter Minis. This video has been kindly sponsored by WarMag, and if you got into Warhammer in literally any other way than the tabletop game, you know that Space Marines are absolute badasses. In the Space Marine Conquest series, and pretty much any Black Library novel, they are unrelenting killing machines. If you play through the Space Marine 2 single player campaign, you'll have annihilated over 10,000 enemies by yourself. And in the animations, yeah, there's just no stopping them. But then you set them down on the gaming table, and they're only slightly more effective than the swarms of space bugs, xenos, and horrible demons that they're supposed to be the ultimate answer to. Which raises the question, why are they so underwhelming in the game that they're the poster boys of? Well, I think there's two main reasons. First, probably most important one, is money. If Space Marines were as unstoppable on the tabletop as they are in the fiction, you'd only need a handful for a proper army, maybe 5, 10 tops for a 2,000 point list. And that is not going to keep the shareholders happy. And those new warehouses and factories in Nottingham aren't going to pay for themselves, so instead, Space Marines have to be just strong enough to feel elite, but weak enough that you'll buy 20 boxes of them, plus tanks and flyers, Primaris Lieutenant number 17, and whatever the latest FOMO box happens to be. The second reason is scale. 40k's rules just aren't built to capture what makes a Marine terrifying. The stories talk about precision strikes, impossible reflexes, and centuries of battle experience. The tabletop game has to be vaguely balanced and simplified to be actually playable and moderately fun. Move 6 inches, hit on 3s, wound on 4s. You have to keep it simple to keep the game flowing. 40k is designed for chucking buckets of dice around and sweeping whole squads off the board, not for simulating one warrior dismantling an army with surgical skill. But what if there was a game set in the Warhammer 40,000 universe that was more granular, more personal, more brutal, where every model matters and every tactical decision, every stat, every model placement makes a massive difference on the game, where you could actually depict the exciting narratives you see in the lore, the video games, and the animations? Yeah, I'm not talking about Kill Team. That is arguably worse than 40k for immersion-breaking balance. Like 10 regular squaddies going up against elite, heavily armoured superhuman soldiers? Yeah, pass. I'm talking about NECROMUNDA. And in a few previous videos, I've already explained that it is by far and away my gaming group's favourite Games Workshop game at the moment. How many times can I say game in a sentence? Holy shit. It's way more tactical, way more immersive, way more granular, and just way more fun than modern 40k. It's faster to set up, it's cheaper to play and collect, and it gives you a massive scope for creating really fun narratives that evolve over the course of your games. The only thing is though, there's no Space Marines in Necromunda, right? It's all just humans, more or less. Well, no, actually there are Space Marines on Necromunda, and I'm not just talking about the superhuman vampire muscle man who's obviously an abandoned blood angel. Necromunda is home to a recruitment outpost of the Imperial Fists. The Hive World's inhabitants live lives of brutal violence, scarcity, and constant fighting, producing exactly the kind of hardy, ruthless, and tenacious candidates that the Imperial Fists look for to replenish their ranks. Potential aspirants are tested in the infamous Sump trials, where gangers are thrown into lethal situations, and the lucky survivors may be chosen for elevation, the idea being that only the toughest and most relentless make it off-world. They don't have a sprawling fortress monastery, more like a secure outpost designed for recruitment, logistics, and maintaining their long-standing ties with Necromunda's ruling houses. So, with all this in mind, my pal Steve and I thought that an encounter with some Space Marines might be the perfect final boss scenario for our year-long Necromunda campaign we've been running at Steve's studio. There's two problems though. First off, there aren't any rules or stats for Space Marines or their gear in the Necromunda rules. And second, even though Space Marine models were given a scale boost in 2017, Necromunda models were also sized up with the new edition, so if we want them to have that terrifying big boss feeling, we're going to need to rethink them. I say we. Steve literally did all the hard work. What I would have done is just find some third-party Space Marine STLs and print them 15% bigger. But Steve No, Steve's not me. I mean, take a look at all the terrain he built for this campaign and tell me you think he's the kind of person that goes for easy solutions. He took a look at the older designs of Space Marine armor, specifically from 2nd edition in the early 90s when both of us got into the hobby, going over Jez Goodwin's artwork, studying the different armor designs, and then he sculpted a new, unique Space Marine armor, aiming for something a little heavier looking, more imposing, with an aesthetic leaning more into the kind of middle hammer vibes rather than the clean lines of Primaris. But he made them tall, obviously. And yeah, I've said it before, the boy's an absolute genius, and instead of our regular game night, one week while my mum was visiting, we all sat down and painted our Space Marines, each one with a unique pose that Steve had created, and my mum even joined in, painting her first ever Space Marine aged 72. We didn't all follow the same scheme. This isn't a tutorial, just friends having a little painting session, chatting and enjoying time with each other. And this is where we ended up with them, after spending a little bit of extra time with final details and finishing touches. So you've got your minis looking great, but how are you going to transport them to your games without damaging them? Perfect time to talk about WarMag, this video's sponsor. They basically make a simple system of self-adhesive magnet strips that are pre-cut to fit most popular wargaming base sizes, and they also have a huge range of printed magnetic sheets and loads of cool styles that fit perfectly into really useful boxes, which they also sell. Whatever army size or troop type or gaming system you run, they've got a combo for you. And yes, if you're a smarty pants, you can just go online and buy individual magnets and magnetic sheets in a container and superglue and arduously do it all yourself and have something that looks basic but is serviceable, and well done you. But you know what? WarMag is convenient and it looks awesome. And you know what else is convenient and looks awesome? Literally all the models you buy and paint. You could sculpt and cast them all yourself, but do you? No, because it saves you time not to, and you get better looking end results, just like with WarMag. Their stuff has been made with minis in mind and holds them well enough that they don't move around during transit, but also you won't snap your minis when you remove them. Organize, stack, store, transport, and keep everything dust-free. Win, win, win. Win. So if you fancy treating yourself, you're in luck, because with the code MidwinterMinis you can get a whopping 15% off their entire range. But this code ends next month, so time's running out. Time to stock up, I think. Now, how are these Space Marines actually going to work in the game? We're going to need some rules, and after playing both versions of Necromunda on and off for almost 3 decades, I reckon I can have a pretty good stab at it, so here's what I came up with. Now, if you're familiar with Necromunda, you'll have maybe just choked on your own tongue, but if you've never played it before and are just like, what the hell does all this mean, nerd? Let me explain. A movement of 7 inches is fast. Most other gangs are around 4 or 5 inches. A weapon and ballistic skill of 2+ means they are only missing on 1s, meaning they never need to waste an action on aiming unless their target is in good cover. Strength and toughness of 5 is very high, putting them on par with the hulking Ambot cyborgs. 5 wounds is also absolutely monstrous. Most gangers start with 1, and by the end of a campaign they might have 2 or 3 if they're lucky, and that will make whittling them down seriously arduous. An initiative of 2 means they're almost never going to get knocked off edges or fall for traps, and 6 attacks combined with that 2+ weapon skill makes them utterly devastating up close. They also have maxed out leadership, cool, willpower and intelligence, meaning they'll only fail those tests on Snake Eyes unless they have a negative modifier. For their weapons, I didn't want to mess with the classic profiles too much, but I tweaked them just a little bit to give them an edge. Their bolters and pistols have an extended short range for better accuracy bonuses, which makes taking cover against them kind of pointless. They also have a much better ammo roll, making for easy reloads. For extra silliness, the bolter also has knockback, so every shot that hits its target will knock it back 1 inch. Great potential for pushing people off platforms to their doom. Their combat knives have good armor penetration and rending for extra damage on 6s. Their grenades are also a little stronger than regular frag grenades and have a bigger area, 5 inches instead of 3 inches. Also, their potential range is obviously greater because grenades are generally thrown at 3 times the user's strength, and these Space Marines are strength 5, so they can hurl them accurately up to 15 inches. Very dirty. Now we get to the really fun bits, war gear and skills. Now, rather than basically reel off a huge list of equipment that essentially make up all the techie stuff of Astartes power armor, I just sort of baked their benefits into their actual stat line, so I could have more fun with unique rules for them, and so we didn't have to reference 20 different wargear items every single time they activated. So Astartes Power Armor, a nice throwback to the Space Marine Terminator armor from 2nd edition 40k, which was taken on 2 dice. So trying to get a 5+ on 2d6 is about the same probability as trying to get a 2+ on 1 dice. The interesting thing this changes though is how armor penetration works. It'll make it way less effective. Even if they're hit with something at -4 AP, they're still going to try for a save on a 9+ on 2d6, which is just a tiny bit less likely than rolling a 5+ on a single dice. It's kind of like having an invulnerable save, but a little bit more interesting. I also thought it would be hilarious to give them an Astartes equivalent of the regular Stim Slug stash that some gangers have access to, boosting their movement, strength and toughness by 2 until their next activation, but without any chance they'll overdose. This is absolutely bonkers, making them strength and toughness 7, which is hilarious in the context of Necromunda's rules, and also giving them a movement of 9, and obviously a charge range of between 10 and 12 inches, which is just nuts. I also gave them a couple of bits of regular war gear that I couldn't really bake into their stats, namely a drop rig so they don't have to worry about fall damage if they jump off high walls, and a proximity auspex so they can reveal hidden fighters. It kind of seems about right. Now for their skills, you'd be tempted to say they have access to every skill in the rulebook, but that would just be super tedious to bookkeep. Instead, I gave them 5. 3 stock skills and 2 unique skills made just for them. For stock skills, I chose True Grit to minimise the risk of wound rolls, reflecting their tenacity and durability, Nerves of Steel, which lets them choose to not become pinned if they're shot at, they just need to pass a cool check of 3+ on 2 dice, easy peasy, and the final stock skill I gave them was Marksman, meaning they can just ignore target priority and shoot at whatever they want, and also hit rolls of 6 do double damage. Now, for the best bit, in my opinion, the unique skill Astartes, which gives them 3 activations per turn, rather than just 2 like everyone else, and it also makes shooting a simple action, meaning you can repeat it during their activation. This rule opens up all kinds of hilarious possibilities. Stand still and shoot your rapid fire bolter 3 times? Yep. Move 7 inches, chuck a grenade and then shoot at the survivors? Yep. Move and then charge? That's a 15-inch threat range. Take your stims first, and that is a 19-inch danger zone. Shoot, run out of ammo, reload, and shoot again. Absolute comedy. I love it. I also thought it would be fun to add a little cinematic touch with a rule called Indomitable, letting them basically ignore the panicky run-around part of the Blaze rule when they're set on fire. They can just choose to kind of ignore it and just be on fire, take the strength 3 hit, and carry on fighting. It also helps them get out of being webbed too. Steve and I had a little test game, secretly testing out those rules, 2 Space Marines against our full gangs, and it went incredibly badly for us. We took several out-of-action casualties in exchange for chipping off 2 wounds off a single Space Marine. And you might be thinking, this is just ridiculous overkill and our gangs are all just going to die. And that's kind of the point. Each one of our gangs has played dozens of games in the campaign, and they are all ridiculously tricked out. My gang's leader is now 765 credits on their own. The budget for a whole starter gang is 1,000, so yeah, it's all just getting a little bit silly now. So for the final scenario, Steve planned a big reset. All 5 of our gangs attempting to storm the Imperial Fist's outpost on Necromunda, guarded by 5 Space Marines, and make their way through the giant wall to the other side. To the Lander, the only way off-world, the only way to escape an encroaching darkness that's been driving our gangs insane over the campaign. The only problem is that there are about 45 models in our combined gangs, and 2 seats on the aircraft. Whoever escapes can carry forward the lucky ganger's credits value into their next gang, and then everybody else dies. So the day of the final game was upon us, and to show how much I love and appreciate my gaming buddies, I made a set of little wanted boards out of cork pin boards, spiced up mugshots that I distressed, and a list of their most heinous crimes they committed during the campaign. Now, I'm not from Colchester. I moved here 8 years ago. I followed my girlfriend at the time because she got a job here and it was close to her family. I knew literally no one. I had no local friends, no family nearby, and no budget to socialise. But over the years, I've been lucky enough to meet Ant, Steve, Simon, and Charlton, and honestly, they're the best friends I've ever had. So this little token is just a small way of me showing them that. Anyway, that's enough soppy stuff. Time to backstab, betray, and slaughter each other trying to get to this lander. With the Space Marines spread out across the wall, Charlton and I made a soft truce to only start fighting each other once the 2 Marines guarding the main gate were dealt with. The Space Marines, being controlled by our awesome pal Jamie, who's just joined the group and is looking forward to taking part in the next campaign, dealt with us pretty swiftly by raining massive grenades down on us. My leader managed to down an already wounded Marine with some perfect autocannon rolls, which was then finished off by one of Ant's 2 las cannon girls. Yeah, I told you these gangs were tricked out. My gang's close combat specialist champion then got double teamed by 2 Imperial fists and absolutely annihilated. Some excellent rolls from Simon's plasma guns managed to down one of the Space Marines at the side of the wall, and then his Cyber Mastiff was able to perform a coup de grace. The Space Marines were holding fast against Charlton's enforcers and my Goliath goat boys on the ramp, giving Ant Steve the opportunity to start fighting each other, which went very, very badly for Steve, because the Space Marine guarding that side of the wall leapt down and finished off the rest of his gang, taking them out of action, and in this scenario that just means dead. Simon asked if we could Rule of Cool, an action where his jump jet equipped Orlok ganger could jump on top of my Ambot and shove a melter bomb in his mouth at the cost of definitely killing his ganger. We agreed, but he failed the wound roll, so what a dramatic way to go. He still pinned me though. Now, after lots of infighting, backstabbing and getting absolutely trampled by Space Marines in close combat, we all managed to have someone breach the walls. Ant's Eschers struggled against the last Space Marine, but Charlton and Simon both managed to get some gangers to the lander. But can they get it to take off? They need to roll a 5+ to fire up the engines, but Simon failed again and again, even with his trusty dog in the passenger seat. And as we'd already agreed that Ambots weren't able to pilot the ship, and as that was the only model I had that wasn't down and bleeding out, I decided that if Guy can't win, then nobody wins, and I tried to destroy the lander. I rolled absolutely awfully though, I didn't even take a single wound off it. Meanwhile, Charlton won a roll-off against Simon to fight over the pilot seat, successfully rolled to start the engines, and took off, with Simon's dog still in the passenger seat. So that was that. What an awesome way to end an amazing campaign. So what are the takeaways here? First off, absolutely yes, Space Marines can work in Necromunda. 1 Marine will easily be enough to annihilate a starter gang. Even a mature gang with special weapons and tactics will struggle to overcome a single Marine. But with the combined focused firepower and tactics of 5 mature gangs, the Space Marines guarding the flyer were overcome, but not before murdering over half of all our models. If you play Necromunda, check out the link in the description and grab the datasheet for yourself and try them in your own games. This is probably the closest thing I've seen to Marines behaving on the tabletop like they do in the lore, and it was just a whole load of fun. Also, secondly, honestly, what an amazing campaign, I'm going to say it again, and what amazing people to share it with. We've all tried our best to set aside Wednesday nights for game nights, and more often than not, we are all able to manage it. It feels like doing stuff with friends after school back in the day, you know what I mean? And I would thoroughly recommend trying to set something up with your nerdy friends too. And I know some of you won't have local gaming friends. That's exactly the situation I was in 8 years ago. But I tried. I put myself out there. I asked, I arranged meetups, I went to my local gaming stores. You have to put in the effort, but honestly, it's so worth it. Now, speaking of changing lives, do you want these models? We agreed to auction off this squad to help Calm, the Campaign Against Living Miserably, the suicide prevention charity that's on a mission to help people end their misery and not their lives. So follow the link in the description to find this squad 5 totally unique Imperial Fist style Space Marines, not official obviously, sculpted by Steve, and painted by Steve, Charlton, Simon, Ant and myself. Now Steve is not selling these designs, he's not giving them away, these are the only versions of this model that will ever be available to get hold of, so bid generously, it's for a great cause. Apart from that one my mum painted, I'm going to keep that one, sorry. Also, I've got a winner to announce. In the last video, I painted up some of the surprisingly horny Krieg proxies from Wargame Exclusive and ran a little giveaway competition over on the channel's Patreon page. The first person to guess the Imperial Guard unit I'd written down in the envelope wins the squad. And that was Basilisk, correctly guessed by Daniel Skach in about 30 seconds after I posted the competition. So congratulations Daniel, check your DMs and they'll be winging their way to you ASAP. If you want to join in the fun over on Patreon, you can get access to our Discord server, get our upgraded 20% off discount code on the merch store, and get to shape what we do in future videos using polls. You can sign up for just £2 a month. Also, don't forget to check out Warmag and use the code MidwinterMinis at their checkout for a massive 15% off literally anything you want on their website. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.